Welcome to Kubernetes SIG Cloud Provider meeting for Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. We are governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. The short version of that is be kind and treat each other with respect. If you have something that you would like to bring up, feel free to add it to the agenda doc that is in the chat, or raise hands if you would like to talk. We don't have too many things on the agenda for today thus far. So I guess I'll, kick it over to Elmiko real quick and say, hey, Elmiko, how was your KubeCon? Want to tell us about conversations you had there?
My KubeCon was pretty good actually, and yes, I had many conversations. I think in uh, in specific for this SIG, one of the big things that I spent a lot of time on was watching the progress in the node lifecycle working group and what's going on there. Not specifically because I think we'll need to be involved in that, but I think that, given the way that the node lifecycle controller works, I think we need to understand what's being proposed there. So I was kind of following up with a lot of that. I also spent Monday at the workload aware scheduling design summit, which again, I don't necessarily think our SIG needs to get in the middle of that, but there's a lot of discussion around, um, how in the future we'll be able to do scheduling in scenarios where it's like an application might say, I need an entire rack of instances, or I need two racks of instances that are next to each other, or, co-located on the same subnet and whatnot. And in the discussions I had at the design summit, um, I think there might be a possibility in the future that like there could be an expansion of some of the cloud provider, like the cloud controller technology to help with these kind of assessments of what's going on in the cloud. You can imagine today, we do something very simple where the nodes, the node controllers will add things like, region and zone to the nodes that are created. In the future, there might be some sort of interaction needed where you could know that a group of nodes all come from the same network segment, or perhaps they all, exist in the same rack or whatever. It's not clear to me yet how that's going to play out, but I think the way they're designing the plugin mechanism for the topology aware scheduling or the workload aware scheduling, I think is probably an area of interest that, if people are curious about this kind of stuff, I would follow up there. Um, so that was another one of the big areas that I was kind of following up on, and I think there's good overlap for the SIG as well. Um, I think additionally, kind of tangentially to that, I also talked with the cluster API maintainers a lot about the notion of building a kubetest2 deployer for cluster API, or even if we needed to. But basically on the notion of how do we get better support for creating test infrastructure across different clouds or even across hybrid cloud scenarios. So, I followed up on a lot of these discussions. I have way too many notes that I'm trying to go through now that I'm back from vacation and everything. But one of the things that I'm hoping to do that I think will be interesting to this SIG is that I'm working more closely with an engineer at Red Hat who's been working on some of the CCM testing things that we've been kind of planning. And I think probably in the next month or two, I'm going to really try to put the gas down on getting a like demo of this together that we could show off. And I don't necessarily know if I'll use cluster API to create the cluster. I don't think that detail really matters to this group. But it's one of those things where I want to show off how we could start doing this kind of testing and really show the pieces of what I think a future of CCM testing could look like. So I'm starting with kind of one cloud to begin with, and we'll see where it goes from there. So yeah, that was kind of like, I guess that in a very brief nutshell. I'm working on a retrospective as we speak. I'm going to post online soon, but yeah,
Excellent.
in a very brief nutshell, that was kind of my KubeCon.
Fantastic. Yeah. And my KubeCon, I think overlapped with yours in a few areas and then had a lot of, Meta, CNCF, governing board, other things. Um, I'm interested, and I was just pulling up the blog post about workload aware scheduling, and I'll drop it in the chat and in the notes for this meeting. But I scroll down to the end of it, and it looks like, okay, talk to SIG scheduling. There's a tracking issue. Um, there's some caps. Would you say for people who are interested in discussions that came out of the Workload Aware Scheduling Design Summit, should people be over on Slack and SIG scheduling, or where would you recommend people participate to get more involved in that?
Yeah, that's a good question. For people who are just coming to it, I would definitely recommend reading up around dynamic resource allocation and understand how that mechanism works with respect to like resource slices and resource capacity, because it seems like a lot of those mechanisms are going to be reused in kind of a similar style in the workload aware scheduling. And then yeah, I think SIG scheduling is probably a great place to be. I think I'm trying to think, SIG Node, I think also had some overlap there. Um, but yeah, I think SIG scheduling is where a lot of this is going to start from. Um, and yeah, like at
Mhm.
this point, I think really the thing that I would study is I would look at the materials that came out of the design summit, and I'll try to dig up some links and share them because the structure that is being created, and this is something that we'll probably have to learn more about. That there's a proposal for what a new scheduling API would look like, right? So right now, and this was very important for the auto scaling community. Like right now, everything we do when we try to plan scheduling or do predictive scheduling is we take the scheduler from Kubernetes and we like re-vendor it into other applications like the autoscaler or something, right? And this means there's a really tight coupling between technologies that want to do scheduling and the actual scheduler. There's a proposal that came out of the design summit, or it's been worked on in parallel, or previously to the design summit, that makes scheduling into more of like an API, like an asynchronous Kubernetes style API. And this would be based around the notion of being able to ask for like what capacity is available, and then being able to like reserve capacity, and then being able to actually schedule the capacity. So I think getting getting an understanding of what that looks like is going to be really helpful because the next step after that is going to be people writing plugins that are able to interface with this scheduling API. And that's ultimately, I think, where this SIG might have some involvement is there might be a need in the future for cloud-based plugins that can do the type of querying to say, all right, if I've created a request for scheduling capacity and I want to say I want a rack of machines that all have this very specific hardware, that's not a generic API. That's an API that's going to have to be specific to each cloud provider. And my thinking coming out of the design summit was that in the future, there's probably going to be space or there will probably be a need to have cloud provider specific plugins to this scheduling mechanism such that during the flow of requesting capacity, a cloud provider could get in the middle of that flow and say, yes, I can deliver you, 6 racks of these instances all on the same network subnet, or no, I can't do that. These are the kind of things I think where our SIG is probably going to be most on the front lines, as it were, when this comes up. So I think like right now there's a lot of research to be done. And the people I would look to reach out to are John Belmarek and Wojtek. I'm blanking on his name now. But John and Wojtek, I think they're both working with SID scheduling, and their names are all over the DRA stuff as well. Like those are the main contact people. And so, like, if you're looking to get more involved, like, definitely reach out to them on Kubernetes Slack.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that recap. And for those who may have joined during this overview, Almiko was running us through a bunch of the topics discussed at KubeCon, especially in the Workload Aware Scheduling Design Summit, and where they overlap with this part of the org, or with this part of the Kubernetes project. Uh,
Yes, thank you, Walter. That is exactly who I was talking about.
okay, awesome. So I have a follow-up question, which is, Almika, do you think that when you mention, oh, people want to get, you know, access to certain resources, I immediately start thinking of GPUs. Like, do you see this as um, something to be more specific about scheduling, those sort of specific resources? Or like, where do you see that going?
That's like the base layer, right? Like I think where we started from as a community, probably a couple years ago, was yeah, like just being able to schedule and say, I want a GPU of this variety, or I want some sort of specialized accelerated hardware of this variety or another, or specialized network, configurations. But what we're seeing now is that the demand is growing beyond that, right? So you might say, yes, I need this type of GPU, but I need this GPU to also be connected to a storage device that is on the same network subnet or whatever, or is in the same rack and is, local to those things. So it's going even beyond just what we had before, where you're just looking for specific individual pieces of hardware. And now it's growing to like, requests for specific topologies and whatnot. So, that's kind of the direction that I see it going. And yeah, it's complicated. I see Walter has his hand up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Walter.
Walter, yeah.
Well, and I also remember the last time I paid attention, and obviously you've paid attention more recently than I have, Elmiko. But another part to this that was sort of interesting was not being we were we were very reactive scheduler where we just sort of say, hey, where can this job fit? Done. Where can this job fit? Done. And we're also looking very much at like affinity and anti-affinity and saying, okay, I need this hardware, I need this storage, and I need to be co-located or not co-located with these other jobs. And I think that's also what you're talking about, and it gets really complicated really quickly.
No, absolutely. And I think what you're mentioning there is like exactly what this new scheduling API is kind of working towards, because it needs to be more asynchronous like that. Like right now, the scheduler works like, yeah, like a function. You drop a bunch of nodes in, you drop a bunch of pods in, and it spits out some plan for you. But in the future, there's going to be all these decisions that need to be made, and this scheduling API that looks, very asynchronous is it's kind of speaking to that, right? Where you can say, okay, could I even get this hardware? And then, the something, a plugin will give you back a response saying that, okay, this hardware is available. Now you need to put a reservation on that hardware so that it can become available for you to actually use in Kubernetes. And so you're exactly right. This is becoming a much more complicated issue now, especially the way we're seeing applications that have these really tight constraints around, the topologies and everything that they're defining. So yeah, like it's complicated, but it's also really exciting. And I think for people who are looking for places to get involved, I would seek out I would seek out this new scheduling API and how the plugin mechanism is being designed around it, because it's very much like DRA. Well, there'll be these plugins that can satisfy, certain requests and whatnot. And I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of need to not only write those plugins, but to write all the support around them and everything. So yeah. One other thing I
Okay.
want to mention too,
Awesome.
it's kind of like tangential to the scheduling stuff and
Mhm.
whatnot. Our panel the SIG panel that we gave, I thought went off really well. I think we had probably like 100 to 150 people in the audience. We had a great discussion, and I had several people come up to me afterwards just talking about, um, you know, what they thought it was really cool that we were talking about distributions, and they thought this was something that had been kind of missing from the community for a while. So I don't know where it's all going to go, but I really feel like we did kind of ignite a little bit of a conversation. Um, I don't know, that I felt really positive about afterwards. Like, people were coming up and talking about it and everything. So I thought that was really cool from the SIG perspective.
Yeah, I thought I agree with that. I think that we had a lot of good energy, both in the discussion on the panel and then also in the, large collection of people who wanted to come chat with us afterwards. And as per usual, we had to banish ourselves to the hallway because there was something coming in the room after us. And that's always a good sign when the audience is really engaged and wants to continue the conversation. Um, okay, great. Let's see. Anything else sparked by these topics that people want to discuss, or any other topics before we start looking at like, triaging open issues or anything like that? And we didn't also discuss when we first started whether or not we have any sub-project updates. Don't know if we have anyone on the call from a sub-project who wants to update. Not at the moment. So, yeah, let's see. Let's see, Almiko, you want to take us through the needs triage? Oh, Walter, you have a topic.
This is more of a flag for the future, just something to think about. But I think as many of us are aware, the price of memory has been skyrocketing.
Indeed.
So I know one of the groups that I work with over on the API machinery side has been looking at interesting ways to reduce memory footprint on the Cube API server. And so they've been looking at doing things. I think we managed to get one set of PRs in to do string interning on some of this field management structures to reduce their footprint. But I was going to say, since we own the cloud controller manager at some level, we may want to start also thinking about, where our memory footprint is and if there's anything we can do to help reduce there. Interestingly, I will say, unfortunately, we declared victory so long ago that I don't think we can claim it. But most of the processes, I think, were reduced by 50% when we removed the cloud provider specific code. So we've already done a lot in this space. Just too long ago to claim the win. But yeah, I will say, I think, at some point it may be worth taking a look at and seeing if we want to do something to do with the CCM's memory.
This makes me very happy to hear this because it tickles a very old school part of me that used to count bits and bytes and try to figure out how many cycles we were using. Yeah, no, I think it's great, and I think it's the kind of thing where this is another opportunity for people who want to get involved in the SIG, like being able to like run some of the CCMs in like benchmarking modes and being able to run them and evaluate how much memory we're taking up is definitely something that people could kind of run with. And we could, that's a great place to look and say, how could we make this better? How could we find optimizations? And I think it also ties into something you and I talked about like probably more than a year ago, Walter, which was like there are optimizations that we could still do on the controller managers that we kind of share with the core Kube controller managers. And I think there are abstractions we can still make there where we could commonize some of what we're doing. So maybe we could even get benefits from the work that's being done on the Kube controller managers too. So I think this is awesome, and I would love to see more work in this area.
I agree. I will also say, if anyone is interested, pprof is your friend, and so get comfortable with how to turn pprof on and how to extract things like stack dumps from pprof, because it'll really make your life better.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Any other topics before we take a look at the needs triage? And Elmiko, you want to take us through? There's just a few, but then there's a bunch of old ones that we might be able to do something about.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think this top one is probably something that, this probably requires more investigation. I haven't really looked at this one yet, but I guess since we're here, might as well. So they're saying that there's like a conformance job failing and they're tagging us for it. Oh, I do remember this one now. I think this is one of these things where we require someone to look at the image and kind of figure out why this SSH command is failing to run. So I'm not, I think Ben's already got kind of like the right people tagged for this. So there's probably, yeah, like Ben thinks maybe we own it, but maybe I'll add a note here.
Did I see something about EC2? Do we need one of our Amazon friends to take a look at this?
I mean, we might. I think that's what Ben is trying to get a hold of here. Because ultimately what's happening is like something has changed inside of the cloud image, and now it's not finding, the SSH command to run. And yeah, we need someone to kind of look at the image and debug that. Um,
Kirtan, is that something that you'd be able to find us the right person?
Yeah, I can find someone. Take a look, or I can take a look.
Awesome, thanks. Omiko, you want to drop the link to the issue right in the chat so Kirtan can grab it easily? Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, or you can just tag me in this an issue. I can take it.
And your GitHub is which?
AML.
Ah, perfect.
I got you, Kirtan.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, so the next one is this old old favorite of ours, about the hybrid cloud, native support. And I think there's still more that needs to be defined here about what we would want, right, or what could be done. Although I hadn't looked at Grace's post here recently. Yeah, I mean, like, I I think honestly that what I wanted to see was like, more information on the cap. I don't think there's really much for us to do at this point. Like we haven't accepted this. We're still
Mhm.
not sure that we want to accept this. Like the idea is nice, but I think the devil's in the details, right? Pardon my
Mhm.
language here. Because like what does it mean to build a hybrid cloud? How do what are we talking about in terms of networking and virtual private clouds and everything? So like, I'm not really, I don't know. Like I'm open to people's thoughts if they think we should do something here.
Well, do we have somebody on the call who wants to do more of a dive and investigate this?
If you want to assign it to me, I can do a first pass.
Okay, great.
All right. Now I was looking at this one before and I thought we had resolved this one. So this probably requires another investigation. I thought this had been fixed, but we probably need to talk to Joel again. And Joel's on PTO this week. But we were waiting on a feature, the special leader election feature to get merged. But it's been like 6 months now, so maybe it has.
Yeah, it looks like he was saying in December that it still needed to be worked on. So
Right.
maybe just
Can I ask one stupid question? If you happen to know the
there's
answer, Almiko.
no stupid questions.
All of my questions are stupid. I work hard to make it that way. Uh this seems isn't this a I mean the title sounds pretty bad, but my memory is leases expire naturally. So this seems like it's an optimization where we're trying to release earlier, not it's that it won't release. I mean, am I
Right.
miss
No, you're exactly right. Um, I think that was the nature of this was that it will release eventually when the timeout goes out, but like when the controller stops, when the actual like CCM shuts down, it doesn't release it immediately. And there are some controllers that that immediately release when they're leaving. And so like, yeah, and I think Joel had Joel knows much more about this than I do, but he had been looking into this special leader election feature that I think he was trying to get in place so that we could use that release on cancel so that when the cancel context went hot in the controller, it would also release the leader election. But I don't know if that ever got merged into the API machinery or not. But you're right. Like the least duration by default is defined by that like 2 minute or 137 second, boundary. So it'll release. It just won't release right away.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, part of it that I remember, uh, just subtle thoughts here, and I'll let it go. But we had this, one of the reasons I thought that it worked this way, and things have changed in the years since I worked on API machinery, but was there wasn't a general trust that controllers would actually obey contexts and would exit just because, and that various Go routines, etc., would actually clean up just because you did cancel or stop. And so the goal was to kill yourself as quickly as possible to minimize the opportunity for split brain. And I guess the one concern I have is if we cancel, then other people are immediately taking over, and we haven't even gone away yet, and we may still be doing things. I do worry that this gives a maybe a very short window for split brain, but it does seem like this is opening up a bit of an opportunity for some split brain kind of scenarios.
No, I mean you're right, and I think looking at this again, I think this is kind of where you know where I think where Joel had tripped over this or where he saw it was like when we were doing upgrades in OpenShift. And so we were like, the old CCM was going away and a new CCM was coming in place. But there was a gap in time when the old CCM went away, it still held the leader election. And so the new one was just waiting for the leader to drop. And during that time period, if new nodes came into the cluster, then they wouldn't be serviced by the CCM when they arrived there. And I think likewise, it could also affect services that are created during that time window. And so in our testing, our upgrade testing is where we were kind of tripping over this. And I think he was trying to see if we could make the timing a little tighter there. Um,
And I like that idea. I just wonder if we could be a little sneaky and do something like say, I'm going to reset my lease for some number of seconds in the future as long as it is less than the current lease timeout. So we reduce that 2 minutes to no more than 5 seconds,
right.
but we still buy ourselves some time to go away.
Right. This would be like as we're getting ready, as the cancel context like percolates through the controller manager, we say one of the things we're going to do is reset our lease duration to like 5 seconds from now, so that it gives us time to finish, and then the lease will go away immediately. I mean, that's another way to look at this too, for sure.
Just a thought.
Do we want to triage accept this, or are we still waiting to see if we want to triage accept it?
I think we should triage accept it. I feel like we did accept it in the past, but it's been going so long that
Oh, okay.
that we just it's rolled over again.
All right. So maybe re-accept.
I always mess the slash commands up. So hopefully I got it right this time. Okay, cool. I got it right. Okay. Refactor of the interface of CCM. This sounds like a big one. The current CCM interface from 2021 is probably not what it is now. I'm seems like Walter thought this was a good idea 5 years ago.
All right, Walter. What did you think 5 years ago, and what do you think now?
Well, I mean, it would be interesting to see. CC actually did a bunch of work for us refactoring the CCM interface. Can we click on that link? I'm just wondering if it goes to a particular doc. No, it just goes to this. All right. So CC did a bunch of work, which a lot of it was about trying to make it so that we could upgrade the cloud controller manager code that we own in such a way that doing so doesn't automatically break the individual cloud providers. And so we played some interesting little games with things like the initializer functions and how we do per controller configuration so that it was pluggable in a way that we could do the upgrade the framework without that stuff breaking. And I seem to remember that all got done. And I'm honestly just wondering if, in fact, at some level, this is completed.
Well, I think I think some of it might be completed, right? Because I think the ask here is to change this from like multiple parameters to like a single structure that can be passed in. But I guess maybe, we probably have to go back in time to see what it looked like back then as well, because it might have. Okay, so it looks like we might have combined some of these things, like the additional flags and the stop channel and the init cloud. So it looks like this has been changed since then. We did condense those.
Yeah, I suspect that this is actually done and that
Okay.
CC just didn't actually close it out. Yeah.
And then do we want to re-triage accept it because this one is not a pending to be accepted? Because it looks like our acceptance, like, Chef Taco triage accepted it in 2021.
Right. Do we need to re-accept it though, or can we just close
I
it?
don't know. I mean, it's just going to show up in our still not accepted searches.
Well,
So.
I'm going to close. I'm planning to close.
Oh, if you're closing it, okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're making progress. We're closing issues. This is big. This is big days. Okay. So that remove the I think the slash cluster directory has mostly been removed at this point. Although this goes much beyond us. I know there are still a few things I mean, let me just open it quickly because I know the cluster directory still exists, but I think a lot of stuff has been removed from it. Yeah, okay, there's still plenty of stuff there. Let's just make a copy.
Who are the current owners of the cluster directory? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because if it's us.
And I see Walter here. Walter's an owner. Well, he's a reviewer. And Walter's also an approver. Okay, so like Walter's on the hook for this. It looks like you're
So
like the usual suspects.
usual suspects. I mean, one interesting thing would be to see if how close we are to getting rid of this. I know on Cloud Provider GCP that we are pretty far along on killing the cluster directory and going to comps. So it would be interesting to see if we actually still need the cluster directory in KK. And I mean, we can go take a look, but I thought there wasn't a whole lot outside of the weird GCP stuff left in the cluster directory. So kind of it would be good to see if we're actually about at the point where it can go away.
Well, and I had been looking at this stuff recently because, I was trying to figure out like, oh, do we still have like the GCE specific commands to like, remove nodes and stuff like that? And it looked like a lot of things had actually been removed. So like, and even to the extent that like so I had been investigating this stuff through the end-to-end testing framework, right? I was trying to follow up and see like, okay, what are we doing? What are we doing, for example, for like this cloud provider delete nodes context, right? But when I went and actually looked, it seemed like we're starting to replace all these with the fake provider. So like these frameworks aren't even going to the commands they used to go to. We've extracted all of the cloud provider specific stuff. So there's probably more work that needs to be done here. And this is kind of what I want to show with the demonstration of the test that we've been working on.
Well, maybe the thing for us to say is, look, we think Cloud Provider is no longer needs this, and we think this is now down to pretty much test alone.
Yeah. I think that I think that makes sense. Um, Man, I wish I could remember where I saw this stuff. I got too much context stuck in my head at the moment. Okay, well, we've asked the question here. Let's see if anybody comes back, and we'll come back to this next time. I won't change anything on the needs triage, so we'll see it again next time we come back to it. Okay. Decoupling cloud providers from the EDE framework. This is something I'm definitely actively looking at. Okay. I think I would like to triage accept this one because I'm actually looking into this and making some stuff. So I'll make a note
Awesome.
here.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah.
Assign El Mico.
Yeah. Signed it way back long ago. What is this thing? We closed that. Okay. I know I can't remember my colleagues. I'll come back to that. vSphere Cloud Provider failed to detach volume from shutdown node. Okay, so this should be now in the cloud provider vSphere if it's even still a problem because this code does not exist in KK anymore. So I think we should probably close this.
Yeah, maybe with an at mention, if we can figure out who in Cloud Provider's vSphere might care, just so that it's like highlighted to them.
No.
Who's in the owner's file there? Oh,
Oops. I need to look at the
that
alien.
is, yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, hey, look at that. Chef Taco. Once again, the usual suspects.
The usual suspects. Sure. Yeah, I think the notion here though is that probably the issue needs to be reopened if this is still an issue with vSphere.
Yeah, maybe just stay on the if this is still an issue,
Right.
or for posterity, if somebody comes along, finds this issue, feels like it's still an issue, please open it over here.
Sorry, while we're in the vSphere, can we go back to the vSphere cloud provider vSphere for 1 second? There's just one thing I wanted to take a quick look at, if you don't mind.
You wanted to look at the owners or the issues or?
I actually want to with this page. Okay. I just wanted to see if it was still being how actively it was still being maintained, and very so.
Yeah,
Awesome.
no, as far as I know, yeah, we use it at Red Hat, so I know we downstream it at the very least.
Cool. No, it looks like it's being very actively maintained. All good.
Look at us closing issues today. This is like
Got the post-conference energy.
yeah, totally. We're cleaning things up. All right, Cloud Controller Manager doesn't query cloud provider for node name, causing the node to be removed. I feel like this is probably not an issue anymore, considering that it was opened in 2018.
And it
Yeah, I would
references
say
CoreOS.
let's mark this one as we don't think this applies any longer. If you disagree, please reopen.
Remove provider-specific details from end-to-end tests. So this is more cleanup work. I think we can probably close this as well. Yeah. Yeah, these ones from like 2018 is we could almost just go through and just start closing them off.
Yeah, I think when we last did this exercise, we kept some of them around because we thought that they were going to be something we were going to work on soon or sometime. But
I guess, is this still an issue? Well, if this is an issue, it needs to be on the cloud provider GCP repo. It
oh
shouldn't
yeah,
be.
that's a fair point. It's just point people to if we're closing it here, put it over there. Everything's out of tree. And if other folks have anything else they want to talk about in today's call, we're finally taking the time to do a little bit of cleanup on these. But if anybody else has any other stuff, please let us know because other than that, we're quickly coming to the end of today's agenda. But please speak up now if you do have anything else you want to talk about today.
No, this is kind of an interesting issue because I feel like right now we are providing the cloud configuration from the API server in the form of a config map. Oh, this is
Has
about
it been
bootstrapping. I don't
has it been
feel
discussed to change that?
well. I'm not even sure this is something that we should be even handling. Like this is a node lifecycle kind of thing, right? This is about how you create nodes and whatnot. Has
I see it
anything?
is tagged with SIG Cloud Provider and SIG Node. Do we feel like SIG Node maybe wants to take a look at it or?
Well,
Hmm.
like like, aren't we doing this already? They're asking for like a mechanism to serve cloud provider configs from the API server. But as I understand it, most CCMs use some sort of config map in their namespace to control their configuration, especially with respect to like how they speak to the cloud. So is anything like what else would be needed here? Yeah, see, like they're talking about, I think this is getting into the cloud configuration is laid in like the user data or something, which I wouldn't expect to be coming from the cloud. Like I wouldn't expect to be coming from components that we're controlling. I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be coming from things that SIG node is controlling. This is actually like a SIG cluster lifecycle thing in my mind.
Hmm. Do you think it's worth taking SIG cluster lifecycle and asking them if they want to take a look at this and see if it's even still valid? If you think that there's merit here?
I'm not sure there is, because like when I think about cluster API and KOps and whatnot, like they have mechanisms for doing this currently.
Maybe maybe circle back and say, hey, today cluster lifecycle would handle this. We think that cluster API, KOps, et cetera, have mechanisms for this. If it does not apply, then come back and talk to SIG cluster lifecycle, and then just close it out if we think that that's where we're at.
Um, I'm gonna SIG in here. Okay. Do we want to maybe call it there for now?
Yeah, I think we're just about at time. And unless you want to, now that you've popped this one open, if you want to have one more that we look at.
I wanted to pop this one open because it mentioned GCE specifically. So I was going to what I was going to say was let's copy this.
Just go on with our
Yeah,
lives.
if this is still a GCE issue, let's they can.
Yeah.
Open. But at least then we've closed out a bunch of issues for today, right?
Yeah. Progress.
Progress. We're making progress.
Awesome.
Up some stuff.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We will reconvene in 2 weeks. Does anybody have anything else they want to chat about before we call it for today? All right. Did some yeoman's work today. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks, Bridget. Later, everybody.
Thanks, Amika. Thanks,
Bye
folks.
bye.
Take care. Bye.